Hello, hello. Sorry, I dragged the mouse and for some reason I actually clicked in a weird place compared with what I thought it was doing. Anyway, hi, how are you? How are you? My voice is very obviously a little bit strange still, but that's okay. I'll try to lean into the microphone so I don't have to get too loud, and so therefore I'm not going to start coughing too much. Anyway, how are you? I hope you're well, and if you're not, I hope we can provide some light entertainment for you. So there you go. Fairly definitely we'll be providing some light entertainment for you. Right, first up, where's my brain? I'm not sure. I've been trying to do admin stuff for our business, finding documents on my computer, which I thought were in a certain place, and were not. They were somewhere else. I had to do a search for them in the end. It's just one of those things that happens. But we've had somebody decide that they're going to help us with one of the things that I make for our business, something that I don't need to be personally making, but we just haven't asked anyone else to do it because we didn't know anyone else who would do it and wasn't going to charge us heaps for it either. And thankfully that was offered to us, and so that's been organised now, which meant I had to do some bag making, just the little calico bags that I make, which I've talked about before. I hope I'm loud enough. If I'm not, I can try and turn my volume up a bit, but let me know if I'm not, okay? Please. Anyway, hubby is downstairs in the garage doing wood turning, so you may get sounds from that. The cat is sleeping on the sofa. If you saw my Instagram, Facebook or Twitter announcement that I was going to be reading today, then you should have seen the photograph of the cat snoozing on the sofa. There's also, I tried to get a video that was going to, where you'd be able to hear him purring, but the volume of his purr was not loud enough, so I just put the video up without sound on it, just because otherwise it's just room noise. Didn't make any sense to have the noise there. Anyway, I am going to say a big thank you to Colorado for subscribing last time. I think they subscribed right at the very, very end of my stream, so I didn't actually get to say that on the stream properly. And I don't know that they're here at the moment to be able to hear me saying thank you, but it's just one of those things. Good to be able to acknowledge it. Hi, I'm going to say hi to the new people. Hi, I'm Jev. I read old children's books. And by old children's books, I mean books that originally looked something like these. So this one here is over 100 years old. And no, it's not in a museum. This is just at my house. It has thick, chunky paper for the pages. Has a particular paper smell. It's got illustrations that are like this. These ones are coloured plates, just for a change. But they are, they're done as a like a half-tone print with a colour across the top. Half-tone being the dotty version of pictures that you get in newspapers. That's the way they're done. So this one's over 100 years old. I grew up reading books like that. I actually read a paperback book by this author later on that someone had bought me a copy of. That's how I knew of him. And this one here, which is looking a little bit ghosty, ooh, Halloween. Not that the story is, but you know, the book because of my green screen. This one is 125 years old this year, at least. It was given to my grandmother's brother in July, 125 years ago. And yeah, those are the sort of books I grew up reading just because they were the books that we had around. A lot of them were books that my parents and my grandparents had grown up reading when they were kids. They were ones that, sorry, my hair is just sort of like, anyway, ones that they had grown up reading because they were gifted to them or they'd won them as prizes or whatever. It used to be a done thing. And so, yeah, as kids, we did have newer books that were brand new sometimes they were secondhand, that were gifted to us as presents. But we also, the easier to access resource rather than waiting once a year or twice a year, like birthday and Christmas, for books as new ones, because you usually only got one or two, you dig through the boxes of of things, items, or the shelves of books that were in storage at the various grandparents' houses and see what you could discover, which was if you were hungry to read something, it was a great way to discover new books and new genres, because you were not going to the school library and looking only for books by a certain author or books only in a certain series, such as the Hardy Boys or Nancy Drew or anything like that. You were actually finding something and you were desperate to read, so therefore you would read it even if you didn't think it was going to be something you'd enjoy. And often you'd discover that you did. Actually, I got like that with books at the library at school anyway. The public library didn't have a very big children's and teenage section. It was kind of a volunteer set up in the first place. At the stage when I was at school, it wasn't. It was all just stuff that was provided. I don't think it was through the local council or anything like that. They may have put some funding towards it, but there wasn't a lot. And so the school library was way better stocked, and it was all stuff that was focused for our age group instead of adults. A book that's written for an adult, even just a normal novel, is dead boring for kids, for teenagers, just because they are. You know, they cover lots of things in too much detail, and they get into lots of boring adult drama and all this sort of stuff. And so therefore, as kids, we had a lot more fun at the school library than we did with the town library. And also you had to sort of miss the school bus, walk into town, then hope that you'd remembered to have enough money to go home on the workers' bus at 5 o'clock or 5:30 and get off at the right bus stop, which meant that you were in town for ages and ages, and also hope that you weren't going to get in trouble with your parents for staying in town late, because we didn't have public transport. We had the school bus or the workers' bus, which was provided by the same bus company as the school buses. Anyway, so that's just the way it was. So you made the most of the books that you got. And like I say, you got to read a fairly wide range of them. Because of their era, there were a number of them that had a high moral to them, because they were written to teach kids different ways of looking at the world, to their inherently self-centered world view that kids generally have, because, you know, you are the centre of the world that you live in when you're growing up. It's only through various experiences you have that you expand that to actually look at the world from the possible point of views of other people. Learn to be more considerate, learn to share, all those sort of things. Anyway, so that was my reading background, reading old books. And then I discovered when I was in secondary school that high school, college, because our school was called a college, not university type college, sorry, no. We have a different terminology for that in New Zealand. That's university or uni, not college can be a secondary school in New Zealand, or high school even. Anyway, the wonders of English. No, it is not all one language. It's so many different versions, more like dialects, I suppose. Anyway, so I discovered when I was at secondary school that I had understandings of the world and people and places that a lot of my schoolmates didn't, just because first of all, I had relatives who had lived overseas, like reasonably recent relatives, not several generations back, because people in New Zealand have all come from somewhere else. Even the Maori people, they have come from the Pacific Islands originally. Yes, hundreds of years earlier than what the Europeans had, but they had come from somewhere else. New Zealand as a landmass, Aotearoa New Zealand, had been inhabited by birds and various other insects and animals, not ground-dwelling mammals. We didn't have any of those before any were brought to the country by various people who moved in. So that's why we have a lot of ground-dwelling birds. Well, we have a lot of flightless birds, is because they developed without having mammalian predators that could climb trees, that had highly refined sense of smell, that could dig them up and all that sort of thing. because they didn't have these predators so therefore they were able to just develop naturally for them. Anyway, so a lot of my fellow schoolmates, they were multi-generations in New Zealand, yes, like I am, but I have family who have been born in New Zealand and then gone overseas and spent quite a bit of time overseas and then come back. I've got quite a number in my family have done that. Or ones where they've actually been born overseas, like my birth father was born in South Africa. He met my mother in New Zealand and then they moved over to Australia. And they had quite a number of years over there. He died, Mum came back to New Zealand with me. We went and spent time in Canada when I was really, really little. So I've got family over in Canada because part of Mum's family's in Canada and that's where they're from for a number of generations. Anyway, so family-wise, I was a lot more aware of overseas. But on top of that, I had all these books that I was reading because I was so hungry for more from, the words that I could read, places and adventures and stories and different possibilities. And so therefore I would sit and read whenever I could. The more you do that, even if it's fiction, the more you take in other places, other ways of seeing things, the more you actually start to understand, empathise, develop sympathy for people with different life experiences to you. And it's not because you are trying to, it's just because you see other points of view from the inside. When you read a book that is written about someone's experiences, even if they are imaginary, you take that on board. It actually influences the way you then respond. Because when you're reading a well-written book, it's written in such a way that it's a very natural set of responses that the character that you're following has. And so therefore, if they're well written and they are very natural responses to you, they're not jarring in any way because they are written in a way that feels true for that character, you go with them more willingly. And that actually affects the way you perceive the world. It becomes, you take a little bit of that on board and it becomes part of you. It becomes yours and it helps you to see the world slightly differently to what you otherwise would have, which is a good thing. Anyway, so that's part of my background with reading and books and why I do this sort of thing. I started during the first COVID lockdown in New Zealand, just because I wanted something that was outside of the house I was living in and the people I was living with. We had 9 of us in the house during our first lockdown. The house is big enough, but it was still, I like having plenty of space around me. I like having not too many people up close, and so reading books was a way to be able to do that. And instead of just reading them for myself, children's books, because I had some, I decided I would read them for other people because there might be other people who also wanted a little bit of escapism with some very gentle children's books. So I started reading the Millie Molly Mandy stories written by Joyce Lancaster Brisley, and I've continued from there. These days, all I read is public domain books, and a lot of those are actually available to you for free online, and you can download them and read them with ebook readers of varying sorts from a place called Project Gutenberg. Now, I'm going to give you the link for that. There you go. There's the link for it. Project Gutenberg, and as I said, they're free because they are now in the public domain. That means that their copyright has expired. The author has been dead for long enough and the book was published long enough ago that nobody is profiting from the sale of this book anymore in the same way. So somebody, a publisher can republish books that are public domain books and ask you to pay for them, physical copies, or even ebook versions. But if you look, you can find copies of the same books available. They will be formatted slightly differently because the publisher will usually put some effort into making a reason for you to want to pay for their version of it. But they are still usually cheaper than a standard modern published book that they are also publishing. Anyway, so if you want to find yourself something more to read, and it's not just kids' books, then go to Project Gutenberg. Now, I'm part of a fantastic group of readers who all read public domain books, and we are called Codex. You can see the logo for that over there, just past my hype cup, that little magical sack of gifts and presents and things like that. And Codex readers read public domain books, but most of our readers also play games and do other things like that, not all public domain stuff. But the books that they read either are public domain books or ones that they have specific or express permission to read in a public setting without violating the copyright terms of those books, whether it's books that they actually have written themselves, so therefore they give themselves permission, or the author or publisher has specifically given them permission. So they are not breaking anyone's copyright. They have permission to read those books. So if you, let's see, I will give you the link for that. Sorry, I just had a wrong key there and I didn't want to try and post that. So the link that I've just put up in my chat has our Codex Twitch team. Not everybody who's in the Codex team has actually joined the Twitch team yet, but there's quite a few of us who have. And if you go to that link there, which is twitch.tv/team/codex, you will see who's currently live, and also be able to go to all of the different channels of the ones who've joined the team, the official Codex Twitch team. And then you can follow them, you can subscribe to them, all of those sort of things. But you can also join our Discord server, which is the second link in that prompt that I've got over in the chat there. And the Discord server is not just for our readers, it's for anyone who's interested in that sort of thing. And also we've got an excellent channel within our Codex Discord server, even if you are not specifically wanting to follow up on the readers or books that we're doing or book club or anything like that. There's a special section in there called security, which will tell you all about how to look after the online health of your Twitch stream, your Twitch channel. And if you are a streamer yourself, please join the Codex server, even if it's just to read through the information that Goreki has put there in the security channel. It really is worthwhile. You are looking after the intellectual property, the screen name, the contact details and all that sort of stuff of your own community if you actually do things like banning bots and a whole lot of things like that. Yes, there are some bots that are okay. They are ones that have been authorised by Twitch to be part of people's streaming setup for different tool purposes, but there are a lot of bots that are created for hate raid purposes, for stealing information, people's information, and also just to be difficult for people. So if somebody comes into your stream and gifts a whole lot of subs, and you have 3/4 of the entities in your stream today are bots, and only 1/4 of those entities is actual real people, and they donate, for example, 10 subs, on the law of averages, at least 7 of those subs are going to go to not people who are going to keep coming back and appreciate being part of your community. They're going to go to those bots. And you don't want to do that. That's a little bit like a spit in the eye for somebody who's put some money into supporting you and your channel. So rant over, there you go. You'll find out more about all that sort of stuff if you do join the Codex Discord server, especially reading the security channel. It'll help you with a whole lot of other stuff, different tools that you can use. I have mentioned 1 or 2 of them here, but they are not enough on their own. They are not enough on their own. The different links I've given you in the past, they are not enough on their own. You need to learn how to look for bot behaviours, and so you can get proactive about it. Goreki's really good in that he understands a lot of the ways certain behaviours are programmed into them, and he has learnt to recognise them even before some of those links I've given you previously actually recognise some of those accounts as bot accounts. He has often picked up on them. And if he ever offers to be a moderator for your channel, say yes. Do it if you're a streamer, because he will make sure that you don't get as many bots in your channel. It's still your responsibility to look after them. And once you have gone through the first time of dealing with a whole lot that regularly have been coming and visiting your channel, it's a lot easier. You only have to do a big thing, once or twice in the lifetime of your channel. After that, it's just little bits and pieces. It's like when you first move into a house that's just been built and the builders have left, they might think that they've left it nice and clean for you. You're still going to have the carpet layer come and all that sort of stuff, but you've got dust around the edges from where the painters were sanding. You've got little bits of plaster on the floor and all the snippy little bits of wiring and stuff from where the electrician was putting all the wires in place, all sorts of things like that. And it's your responsibility to get that all clean and not just swept out, but wiped down, so that when the carpet layer comes, you're not getting horrible new house dust on top of your brand new carpets. So when you first go to move into your new house, you do all that sort of cleaning, and then afterwards, once you're living in it, you just do a little bit of housework from time to time as you need to. If you've got some decent doormats at your front door and your back door, you won't get as much dust coming into the house on the bottom of people's shoes, things like that. This is like the housekeeping you do with looking after your Twitch channel. And the reason why I will talk about this openly, even in front of people who are not streamers, is so that the people who are not streamers actually understand that, yes, some of us do try to look after you. We try to look after your safety, your privacy, and all those sort of things, so that you are not vulnerable when you're in my channel. And I'm quite happy for you to know that these things go on. That's that side of it. And I said before, rant over, well, kind of, it wasn't, was it? So now we're finished on that particular part. Now, speaking of your safety and security, if you do ever wish to support me in any way, you can follow me. It's easy, it's free. If you are a Amazon Prime subscriber, then you get once a month, you can subscribe to somebody's Twitch channel, which means that the person you subscribe to will actually get a small payment from your subscription, but it won't cost you anything additional if you are already a Prime subscriber with Amazon. You get that once a month free, but you have to every month actually renew. You have to decide who you're putting it to. It doesn't roll over. If you wish to put your own money into it, you can subscribe to me, just like you can subscribe to any other Twitch channel you wish to. But yeah, my favourite is if you want to put some money into people, go and put it into the Codex readers. We're a very small, underfunded group. Most of us, we still have some of our number who are trying to make it to affiliate. One of them is soft spoken. Another one is, my mind's gone blank. I can't remember. Glacier Nesta. He's got an underscore in his name. If you go to our Discord server, you will find links to all of the Codex readers, not just the ones who've actually joined the team. So that's a great way to do it. I'm not saying it to ask for subs for me. I'm saying if you go and follow any of the other Codex readers, it would be really awesome if you do. If you can spare it, if you can subscribe to them. And it really is appreciated, I can tell you that now. If you do wish to do things like give me tips or buy gifts for me, I do have a privacy secure gifting mechanism. So if you go to Throne, which is over there on your left hand side of the screen, there's a little wee tiny little thing that says see my wish list at throne.me/u, the letter U for user, and then /jevvv, or just type in Throne gifts as a search, Throne gifts, and then my username always 3 V's, jevvv, and you'll find me somehow. But that one, well, if you do choose to ever buy anything for me off my wish list, it won't give me your real name, your payment details, or where you live, okay? That's all safe and secure, just like it won't give you my real name, where I live, or anything like that. And so therefore both of us are safe, privacy-wise. Whereas if you use something like Coffee, which is a link that's down there, it doesn't hide all that information unless you specifically choose to put different information in when you're giving a gift or a tip. I don't tend to use the term donation because in New Zealand that is actually a legal function. A donation is something that has to go to a legally recognised charity within New Zealand. They have a tax status that is different to ordinary people and businesses for them to be able to be tax exempt. And so therefore New Zealanders don't tend to use the term donate when they're talking about someone gifting them some money or something like that. We tend to use the term tip for that sort of thing. It would be really cool if you could organise who you follow in your listing somewhere. Every now and then I will go through my information. Sorry, I'm just responding to Coleslaw. Those of you who are over on YouTube wondering what I'm talking about, Coleslaw has just put a comment over in our chat. Wish there was a way to organise who you follow. So every now and then with some of the things that I do, I will copy information that I have in my browser that I'm looking at, and I will save that to either a Word document or an Excel spreadsheet. And then I can rearrange things how I want them. And then you can actually choose how to prioritize things. I think the Twitch information thing, when you look at who you follow on Twitch, I think who you have, I'm not sure if it's who's been online most recently or who you've visited most recently. It's one of those two, I think, is the sequence that they actually put them on your screen to be able to find them. Otherwise just go up to the search bar and type in jevvv or something like that if you're looking for me. But there's no really easy way of sorting that otherwise, as far as I can tell. It's one of the downfalls of the system. Unfortunately, one of the negatives of it. What I am going to do is turn on our jigsaw puzzle, if anyone wants to do it. This one will be a little bit harder. There's a lot of white in there. So I left it only at, I think it's 100 pieces, something like that, just because it will be a little bit harder in case there was anyone wants to do it. There you go. And if you want to, new people, type in !jigsaw, JIGSAW, or !puzzle, PUZZLE. Okay, and that will bring up the link so that you can do the jigsaw puzzle. You'll be doing it in a different browser window or tab, but you'll see what's going on. Everyone will see the movements up here, probably a few seconds after you actually do it in your browser. But that way others can also have something to look at when they're seeing the picture coming together. So it's a bit of fun that way. What else do I need to say to people who are new? I've been doing this for a while now. It may not look like it. Yes, I have a cold at the moment. No, it's not COVID. My voice is coming back. I'm not coughing and spluttering as much as I was before. I may have to be away at the end of the week. I'm not sure, in which case I will try to put that through as a post on Instagram, which will feed through to my Facebook and also my Twitter account. I should give you my socials. That's what I need to do. Yes, that worked. Yay. Okay, I will also put on screen for those of you on YouTube who are watching this. This is where I read on Twitch New Zealand. I'm just putting my arms out so you can see the letters because I haven't yet figured out how to put a solid background behind that. Okay, so that's my my web address for Twitch. If you want to be involved with the chat, doing jigsaw puzzles, asking me questions, all that sort of stuff, or just being able to there's a bit of a buzz actually being able to watch something as it's happening. I'm not quite sure why, it just works that way. So if you want to do that sort of thing, then this is the link that you go to if you're on YouTube at the moment. If otherwise, look on my About page on YouTube, and that's also got this link. So it's twitch.tv/jevnz. Don't forget, Jev always has 3 V's if it's my name, except for when I'm telling people how to pronounce it, because they see more than one of a letter and it's more than 2, and their brain just sort of flips out. So that's why if I'm telling people how to pronounce it, I just put 1. But other than that, that's what that is. That's what that link is. And if you are watching this over on Twitch and you want to see your fair share of links, here's my YouTube channel link. You just put a /C for channel and then / my screen name again. But that's also over actually in the chat. So I'll take that off. You don't need to keep seeing that. We try to keep this a family-friendly place. So the way I explain it for a lot of people is it's granny safe. So grannies and their grandkids, if they want to actually have a story read to them, they can come and just catch up on whatever's going on over here. And so therefore, we've got some fairly strong filters in place for language. If you type all in capitals, your message probably won't come through. If you use too many emotes, and I don't know how many that is, they probably won't come through. That's also why I don't have Francoface or BTTV emotes enabled on my channel, because they in some places have been associated with hate raids and things like that, because there are certain emotes that can be used from their ones that when people string them together can imply some pretty nasty stuff. So therefore they're not enabled on my channel. So if you were wishing to use those, I'm really sorry, it's not going to work. But it's all about keeping it a family-friendly place. If you just try and keep in mind that, yeah, this is a place where grannies can come with their grandkids to listen to old stories, and that I'm doing it this way because, and not that it's only for them, definitely not, and not that it's only for kids, because Twitch in their excuse me, terms of service say that you have to be 18 plus or have express parental permission if you're over 13. Actually, I better put that in there. Sorry. Yes, I do actually have my throat lozenges. I will get them out now. I was doing so well. It's not that it's for people only for people like that. It's actually that it's a safe place for them, so they can discover that it doesn't have to be all bad language and shooting games online, on live places like Twitch, because Twitch is a great place for watching stuff live that isn't specifically shooting games, or isn't specifically lots of bad language. I don't have a problem with people using language, but just not in this place. I don't tend to use it myself, but that's just the way I grew up. And we have a tendency to either carry on with the way we were when we were growing up, or to rebel against that. And because my parents were reasonably open about lots of stuff, I didn't feel that what rules they did have for us when we were growing up, I didn't feel there was a need to rebel against them, because all the rules that we had, the rest of the family rules, were very reasonable. And I think it's really good for kids to actually learn that you can have boundaries like that. Anyway, so we keep it a family-friendly place. There are different things in place to make sure that the grannies aren't going to get too upset. If you're a sweary granny, that's fine. You're just going to feel a little bit lost if you can't use the language here, but I'm sorry about that. If you're not a sweary granny, then you're not going to get a lot of it happening here, so you'll feel okay. But the reason why I specifically talk about grannies is because a lot of the stories I read are ones that are familiar for them. And I think it's really neat to give people a place where they can share something with their family. So with grandparents, that they can share with their mokopuna, their grandchildren. stories that they remember, that they have fond memories of, things that they know that they're not going to feel awkward about telling their children, that they shared with the grandchildren when their own children come and pick up the grandkids. That sort of stuff. So they can actually share something that is from them rather than just joining in with what the kids usually share with them. So that sort of stuff. Because a lot of grandparents, when they grew up, if they're older than me, if they're like definitely older than me, then there's a lot of those grandparents who will not have had lots of TV programs to watch when they were growing up because they probably didn't have TV. They would have had books. So there's that sort of thing. So that's a lot of what my channel is flavoured suitably for. And I probably don't need to tell you any more along those lines. I think I've probably said enough. There'll be various people drop in and out at different times just because a lot of my friends are streamers, and so they will maybe finish what they're doing on their stream and then come over here and join in here. And also, you're most welcome to lurk here if you want to let me know that you're lurking so I can say hi to you. Then just type in !lurk in the chat, and then it will notify me that you are. Everyone else can say hi to you and all that sort of stuff. But if you want to be lurking because you have things that you're doing while you're listening, that's all good. This is not like a chat where I'm demanding that you get seriously involved with stuff. So I've got 3 tips for those of you who are new here. I mean, they're valid for everyone else too, but everybody else knows about them. So the 3 tips that I have that make being here a more comfortable place for you as well as for me is 1, drinks, 2, snacks, and 3, your favourite chair or whatever. So drinks, I always have water available. Just as you saw before, I do get a little bit of dry throat every now and then, but you don't. Water is great. It helps. This is my original water bottle. It's my favourite because I love the colour. I love the shine on it. It's anodised aluminium, so it's got this sheen. But like I said, I love the colour. I don't drink from this now because it's tall and thin and it tips over very, very easily and it doesn't hold a lot of water. But it's the one I like to wave at you guys when I'm telling you, go and get your water. Or did you get your water? Are you ready? That sort of thing. It's a great reminder for me, which is why it always sits on my desk. Water is brilliant. It helps your brain to function and it helps your body to function. Specifically for me, it helps my voice to function. If you are dehydrated, you cannot think well. If you are finding you're getting lots of headaches, you may be dehydrated. And it takes more water than you expect to stay hydrated, but your body will thank you for it. If you stay well hydrated, you'll find you actually think a lot better. You often think faster. And if you are sick and you're getting over it, you'll actually throw off all the gunk from that quicker than you otherwise would have. I'm doing better with this cold this time because I am drinking plenty. But you don't have to just have water if you're here on my channel. If you have a favourite tipple, by all means enjoy it, as long as you are not listening to me while you're driving. This is if it's alcoholic. That's usually what the word tipple references in British English, which the basis of New Zealand English is British English. I also have a favourite drink with me aside from water, and today it is a flat white, which is a New Zealand Australian, we argue over who had originated it, espresso-based drink, which is a little bit like a cappuccino, but without the big frothy bubbles on top. It has the micro foam on top. And the steam has gone through the milk when it is being heated, and it puts this microfoam right through the milk, and it makes it beautifully velvety. So I have a flat white, which is a double shot espresso with steamed milk. And coffee is my favourite drink, apart from water. But I only have a certain number a day. Otherwise, my brain just goes, oh, probably just like everyone else's. So, drinks, snacks. What do you have to snack on? You can enjoy a story more if you have something yummy to snack on. Even if you're not eating it all the time, just knowing that you've got it just sort of adds this delightful little bit of naughtiness to what you're doing. because I'm looking forward to eating that later on, sort of thing. So this is my tip jar, and if you were wondering, that's actually my coffee account. Oh, look, it's going to focus again. We're doing really well. That's 3 out of the last 3. But it's also my treat jar because it's got a little bit of a silicone seal on the lid so that the ants don't get in. And in here I have some, I forgot about that, Refresh chocolate. It's a New Zealand made one. It's by Whittaker's. And it's a limited edition chocolate. I'll just move the jar out of the way because it changes my voice too much. Refresh chocolate by Whittaker's. Whittaker's is a very old New Zealand brand. It's peppermint and lavender infused 33% cocoa creamy milk chocolate. I probably won't be drinking that today, but that is in my treat jar. And some stage, one day, I will actually, if I still have the packet, even if there's no chocolate left, I'll turn off the green screen and you can see what it actually looks like. And I also still have my ginger nuts. I haven't finished those yet. I have been so self-controlled about those. Ginger nuts made by Griffin's, specifically, if you're a Kiwi, the best ginger nuts are Griffin's ginger nuts because they're hard and you have to dunk them or bite them with your back teeth because they're hard. They're dunking biscuits. We wouldn't call them cookies at all because cookies to us are softer or chewy and ginger nuts are not. They're just hard. You can get ginger crisps, similar, but they're a lot thinner and they just snap delightfully when they're fresh. But these are when you live overseas as a Kiwi, and if you have friends and family who send you a Kiwi care package, it usually has ginger nuts, minties, which are a chewy lolly that's or sweet or candy, which is paper wrapped, and the wrappers on them usually have little jokes on them and puzzle, that sort of thing. Moments like these, you need minties, used to be the advertising slogan, and it would be in all the ads on TV, and there'd be people would do something and then something terrible would happen, kind of, or embarrassing, and so they'd have this punchline. It's moments like these you need minties. So you'd usually have ginger nuts, you'd have minties, you may have a packet of Jaffas or snifters, and they're another candy or sweets or lollies, but they've got a crispy candy outside, a little bit like M&M's on the outside. Jaffas are solid chocolate in the middle, and then they're a round orange ball on the outside, instead of the flattened ones like M&M's, and they're not shiny and they don't have anything written on them. My dad's generation used to joke about being at the movies, being at the pictures, and it used to be in the old days where often the movie theatre would be the local town hall would have a raised bit of seating up the back, another mezzanine floor, and then the stage at the front of the town hall would have a cinema screen that would be pulled down just behind the curtains, and they would project from this place up the back down onto it, and you'd sit in these seats which had a fold down seat on them, so you could walk past them and all this sort of stuff. And these they spread across New Zealand probably around before the Second World War, and then really thrived during and after the Second World War as something to do. And also a lot of places like where we are, we had training camps for the Americans who were going up to the Pacific Basin, into the Pacific Theatre for the Second World War. And so it was something which they could come into town from their camps as an activity to do. They could go to the pictures and also catch the newsreels of what's going on during the war. Anyway, so Dad and Mum and others of their generation used to joke about you'd go to the movies and you'd buy a box of Jaffas, they used to be, instead of the plastic bags that they come in now. And you'd, just to be disruptive, somebody up the back of the seating, because it was slightly tiered seating going down towards the front, somebody'd roll a few Jaffas down, and they'd roll down these wooden floors and go bump, 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 as they would roll them down these wooden floors. So rolling Jaffas down the floor at the pictures was a thing for a while. Not too many of them because you'd had to pay for them and they weren't cheap. But snifters are similar, but they're kind of egg-shaped and they're a pale bird's egg green colour. and they inside that shell, that very crisp shell, a lot more crisp than M&Ms are. Inside that is a thin layer of chocolate, and then inside that is a hard peppermint candy that, as you heat it in the warmth of your mouth, softens a little bit, but it's really hard and it sticks to your teeth as well. Those were snifters. And you could do the same, but they didn't roll as well because they're not spherical. They're actually kind of egg-shaped. Anyway, things that people used to eat. Lollies. Anyway, those sort of things used to be in care packages that people would send us when we were living in England. Ginger nuts especially. That's why I was talking about that. And jelly beans, New Zealand jelly beans. And if you had people in your family who liked black jelly beans, because they're always aniseed flavoured, if they're the proper New Zealand ones made by Griffins, then you would actually have some of your family members would buy a packet of black jelly beans to send to you, just because the ones over in England were not the same. And there were other bits and pieces too that they'd send over. But the things that when you live overseas for long enough, you actually miss, even if you don't eat them a lot normally when you're in New Zealand, they're things that you miss when you live overseas for a number of years. And so they were common to be in care packages. But that started because of my ginger nuts. So that's tips 1 and 2. We're going on for tip 3. Let's see if we can get this done before 4 o'clock so we can get some reading done. So tip 3 is your favourite seat, your most comfortable place for enjoying a story. So whether that's lying on the floor under a blanket and with a cushion or a pillow under your head, in a beanbag, in some wonderfully lavish overstuffed leather armchair that's part of an antique Chesterfield set or something like that, or if it's just something that you like sitting on. It doesn't really matter, but somewhere comfortable. Unless you're working and I'm keeping you company but through your headphones or speakers, then that's okay. We understand that you just have to use, whether it's standing or using your office chair or whatever, that's okay too. Anyway, my throat. We do have a bonus tip. So there's 3, and then we have a bonus tip, which is it's very handy to have a pen and paper. Let's turn it around so you don't need to see a to-do list because there isn't one there. A pen and paper is very handy because I'll often talk about things in the story which are not commonly known things now, and you might want to look them up, or I'll mention places and you might want to follow them. Look them up on a map or find out more about them on Wikipedia or something. So if you write those things down, then you have time to, because you won't remember them when we get to the end of the story, I can tell you that. We get on so many rabbit trails, you will not remember them. I have these handy because sometimes I will want to look up stuff that I've referenced when I'm reading. I want to look them up later on. Sometimes they get put over in our Discord server. That's a good way to do it. Hi, Jay. Great to have you here. Excuse me. Right. We're getting there. My voice is... We'll see. Anyway. Just turn my throat lozenge around because it's up against my gum and the inside of it dissolves and then it starts getting sharp edge. And we'll read. So that's all a random rattle for people who are new here and everybody else. You just had to sit through it. And hopefully when I get this over onto YouTube, I will remember to put on some chapters for you. So if you don't want to listen to this next time, you can skip through to where the story starts. You're missing out on some interesting rambles though if you do that. Anyway, we are reading A Terrible Tomboy by Angela Brazel. This is chapter 18. And it's called Play Acting. The last chapter was to do with spooks or phantoms or ghosts. I'm just looking at what it was called. Dame Eleanor's Ghost, that's what it was. And it was about the fact that supposedly there is a ghost on the farm at the abbey and amongst the ruins of the old abbey that the farm house is built from the materials of. And 1 or 2 of the workers in the house and on the farm have problems because they see ghosts everywhere in their mind. And in actual fact, turns out there was this random donkey that was wandering around because the cheap chap up the road who wanted to feed it didn't want to pay for the feed, so he'd put it into the weedy stuff around the Abbey ruins in the middle of the night and then remove it in the morning so people didn't know it was there. And it was free feed for the donkey. And so that's why they had seen strange things and heard odd noises, but not known why. Anyway, that was just last time's chapter. So this one is chapter 18, play acting. And I'm guessing because that was around the time of Halloween, that chapter, which is why it was in everybody's mind. Now, Halloween is not a big thing in the UK. Well, it might be a bit more now, especially in urban areas, but it's not as big a thing in the UK as it is in North America. I know it's a much bigger thing in the United States of America and in Canada. Having been in Canada for Halloween when I was a little kid and been dressed up as a little bat to go trick-or-treating with my relatives and all that sort of thing, I do have some memories of that. And yes, it was very much a done thing, and I remember seeing lots of other people doing it. It doesn't get done the same way in New Zealand, and also not in England. Possibly in England, it's been a lot more commercialised, a lot more like it is in North America now, over there, starting to in New Zealand. But traditionally in New Zealand, Halloween has been All Hallows Evening, which is more connected with its roots, which was supposedly this belief that all of these spirits that have not yet passed across to where they're meant to be have one last fling before All Saints' Day, which is the 1st of November. So that's why Halloween is the 31st of October. I don't know if you knew that. But because that is a lot more part of the cultural background in England, this All Hallows Eve and All Saints' Day, that has meant that it hasn't taken off with the more modern commercialised version to the same extent, because it's a little bit closer to people's cultural memory, I suppose. Anyway, so that's the background for the previous chapter, but it also sets the time of year we're in. So we're around the time of Halloween, All Hallows Eve, heading towards the depths of winter and Christmas and that sort of thing. We're probably closer to Christmas now in the story. Play acting. We'll start with our chapter poem. Therefore they thought it good you hear a play, and frame your mind to mirth and merriment, which bars 1,000 harms and lengthens life. And I have no idea where that's from. This book doesn't tell us where any of these are from, but you'd probably be able to look them up online. The winter set in cold and frosty, and as Christmas drew near, there you go. As Christmas drew near, the snow came down in real earnest, covering the fields with its white carpet and turning Skye Cottage into a very good imitation of a Swiss chalet. Skye Cottage is their tree hut, remember, from a couple of chapters ago. A very good imitation of a Swiss chalet. Oh, that was something I could have looked up. See, I don't read these ahead of time to decide what jigsaw puzzles we're going to do. I vaguely have a bit of a general idea, but I don't actually read the story ahead of time. Yeah, no, that one's going to be a little bit hard to do. Sorry, I was just looking to see if we had a jigsaw puzzle of... No, that'll be good. We'll do it. I'll pull that one up anyway. It's interesting where that is. Not at all where I thought it was going to be in the world. Sorry, I'm just getting ready for the next jigsaw puzzle because Jay and possibly Q, I'm not sure, are racing through this one that they're currently on. Looking for the right link. No, wrong place. Right document. Here it is. It might be another one that I don't do a huge number of pieces for because, as you've probably guessed with this one, there's a lot of snow. And I don't want it so hard that you wish that you weren't doing the puzzle. I don't want that sort of thing happening. I'd rather that you were able to enjoy it. Anyway, let's get on with the story. And good to know you're game for anything, Jay. Oh, by the way, how would you prefer I say your name? Do you have a preference? Are you okay with Jay? Just like I call QQ. You're JJ. Okay. I'll try and remember. And please don't be offended if I don't remember. I have a terrible memory for important things like people's names and things I have to do. I have a great memory for odd things like actors' names who nobody else in the family remembers. I don't know why. I just do. But if I need to remember their name, I can't. JJ or Jay. Okay, thank you. That's great. I'll try and remember. Right. The winter set in, cold and frosty, and as Christmas drew near, the snow came down in real earnest, covering the fields with its white carpet and turning Sky Cottage, their tree hut, into a very good imitation of a Swiss chalet. It was chilly work getting up in the dark mornings by candlelight and driving off to school when the sun had scarcely risen. Yeah, because driving, that's in the cart with the horse pulling it. That sort of driving. When the sun had scarcely risen. So it's not closed in. It's not like a closed buggy or carriage. That's the word I was trying to think of. The 4 miles of road seemed much longer than they had done in the summertime, and in spite of woolen gloves, the hand which held the reins was apt to be stiff and numb with the cold long before Warford was reached. "I wish I were a cat," said Peggy one morning, quite roused to envy by the contemplation of Tabby Skin's toilette. So Tabby Skin is their cat. Obviously she's Tabby. "To have no trouble with washing or dressing, only just to jump out of bed, hump up your back and stretch yourself, drink your saucer of milk, and then lick yourself comfortably on the hearthrug in front of the dining room fire." Yeah, that sounds appealing, doesn't it? "I think the dormouse has the best of it," said Lillian, "for he sleeps straight on and never seems to feel the frost at all. It would be a glorious plan to retire to bed for the winter. I'm sure nature intended me for a hibernating animal, for I hate the cold. It makes my fingers so stiff I can't practice nicely one little bit." So Lillian plays the piano, and she's quite good at it, and she likes playing the piano, but in winter the cold makes it really hard to get her fingers moving well. And in England, it's common to let the rooms be a bit cooler, to not try and get every room of the house hot, unless you're someone like us and you've got access to free firewood like we did in England. And we had a little wood stove that we would stoke up and keep it going the whole winter. And it meant that our dining room, which was our main space that we spent all day in, was lovely and warm. We had the neighbour over for dinner one night. He was through the wall on the other side of the semi-detached house that we were in, and he had come in from work. He had come in a little bit late, so to make himself nice and tidy, he'd put on a nice jersey or jumper over the pullover over the top of his work shirt. And then he gets over to our place and he's sitting there and he's getting so hot and he's just turning red with the heat and sweat's running down his face because we've got this thing so it's nice and comfortable for us. I mean, we don't come from a cold climate here in New Zealand, this part of New Zealand. And I said, "Look, just take your jersey off." He says, "But I didn't change my shirt." And I said, "Listen, Phil, I know what it's like when Phil's working. Don't worry about it. I don't mind at all if you've got your work shirt on. Just take off the jersey. You don't need to be uncomfortable. You just get comfortable." But this era that these children are in, with the story that we're reading, and in general in England, especially if you live in more rural settings, they don't have lots of air conditioning. They don't have lots of central heating the same way that other countries do. They may have now radiators in some of the rooms, but g'day, how are you, Aunt? It's great to have you here. I am getting there. The voice is kind of improving. But you don't have the whole house toasty warm. And so in the era that we're reading about, every room in the house that is heated has been heated either by possibly coal, but otherwise wood. And they have had to go and chop it or pay for it. So therefore they're probably using wood, because coal they would have had to pay for. Wood they can go out and chop from trees on the farm. And so therefore you don't waste it, because you need to have enough wood to get you all the way through winter so that you can also cook all your food. And so, yeah, her fingers would have been cold. And it does make it a little hard with playing piano fluently. Anyway, we'll carry on. It makes my fingers so stiff I can't practice nicely one little bit, said Lillian. You'd say so if you were at school now, grumbled Peggy. There's a new housekeeper, and she manages so badly that sometimes they are only just lighting the fires when we're going into the classrooms. The studio felt like an ice house yesterday, and nobody was able to draw properly. Some of the girls have the most dreadful chilblains on their fingers. I'm sure one goes through a great deal to get one's education. So, as I said, no central heating. So that means that if you've read the Little House on the Prairie series of books by Laura Ingalls Wilder, if you read some of those books like around the Long Winter, definitely, and around that part of the series where she's a little bit older and she's more aware, this Laura, she talks about lighting the fire in the schoolroom to heat it up enough for when the children come in. So one of the ways that some school boards would save money is by not providing enough coal or firewood for it, because the school board would have to provide it, either themselves or pay for it. And it was the same in England. You'd have a wood-burning fire or a coal-burning stove to heat up the room, especially if the school is not huge. Each room would have its own fire. And that was part of whoever's job it was, not necessarily the school teacher, to actually make sure the rooms were warm enough before the children arrived so that they could learn. I know in New Zealand we had, I don't know about now, probably not a rule, not a needed rule now, because we do have heating. We did have electric heaters, and we also had radiators, depending on if they were prefab classrooms or if prefabricated, or if they were the old build ones, which had radiators. But because the prefab ones, the teacher had to turn on the electric heaters in the actual classroom, they didn't always do that early enough. And so there was a school rule, and I think it was across the board in New Zealand, that if the temperature is below 10 degrees, the teacher was not allowed to expect us to do lessons. So once the room came to up to 10 degrees or higher, then they could expect you to sit down and work. But if it was under that, no. And I remember getting into one, because the prefabs in our school, it was not a 2-story school, now part of it is. The school area had developed reasonably quickly at one stage, and so therefore they had paid for classrooms to be built and brought in, and they stayed as proper classrooms for quite a long time. They were not temporary ones, which some schools used to have for prefabs. See why they don't have that in Canada? Would never work. Yeah, you get much colder temperatures than we do, even in your mild oceanic areas of Canada. You still get much, much colder temperatures because your land mass is such that the whole climate is a lot colder. They expect us to brave blizzards. I know parts of America have snow days where those of you in Canada are going like, harden up, people. You can still get there. I know this because I've got Canadian friends, other Canadian friends as well, and they've told me about it. Well done on that puzzle. You can see why I chose that one. It's nice and snowy to go with our time of year at the moment in our story. So, yeah. It gets pretty cold. I probably asked you before, and I hope you don't mind me asking again, what general part of Canada are you in, Q? Just watching Texas shut down with a sprinkler is such a foreign concept. Absolutely. It would seem hilarious. Mind you, their infrastructure is not trained for it. And when I say infrastructure, I don't mean Well, yeah, I mean power supply if it's overhead, but I'm meaning things like public bus and train services and stuff. Their systems are not designed for it. We used to joke about it in England. They would have days when the trains wouldn't run because there was snow on the train tracks, because they'd had these amazing new designs done on the engines at one stage where supposedly it would. No, it wasn't snow. It was leaves on the track. It was autumn, fall for North Americans. It was autumn. There would be leaves on the track, and they had this system that was meant to blow the leaves off the track so that the train wheels wouldn't compress the leaf into this. It kind of, when you get enough leaves driven over with the weight of the train and the heat that produces on the surface momentarily, it forms almost a glaze on the surface of the track, and it can actually be quite dangerous. And then they have to go through and actually physically remove that coating off the track, which can cause problems with braking, also signals and stuff, because they use the fact that you can run electricity through the track and through the wheels, because they're all metal, as a way of sending signals for where the train is and all sorts of stuff like this. And so everyone in England's like, why is it we're having problems with that? And that's for the leaves. And then in wintertime, you'd have problems with snow on the track. And England doesn't have that much snow, really, seriously. But their trains were not set up for it. Over in France, they were running trains in much snowier conditions, and they had a simple system to protect the engines from the snow. In England, they had an air system that was meant to stop the snow, to melt the snow before it got into the engine far enough to cause problems, to drop the temperature and to cause ice and things like that. And it was this heating and air and stuff like this. The French just put sacking over the air intake vents, which filtered the snow out, and then just banged it every now and then. Otherwise, the rattle of the train as it was going would make it fall off. They just used really low-tech systems, and it worked really well, even with the heavier snow levels, just for ordinary snow, not really bad snow, obviously. And so the French would be like, why are you stopping your trains? They should be able to still run. And the English were saying, oh, we can't run the trains at the moment. There's too much snow falling. So, yeah, I'm just going to read what Coleslaw says. Central Manitoba, where we get the coldest winters here in the prairies. Absolutely. Manitoba is one of the central provinces. If you're looking at a big map of Canada, not just the actual province itself, but if you're looking at a map of Canada from one side to the other, Manitoba is one of those ones that's in the middle chunk. So you get over to the west, you've got the Rockies. That's further west again. Sorry, this is for everybody else. And I will get my geography wrong, but still, you know. And then when you start coming further east, the land is flatter and you have nothing between those provinces and the Arctic Circle. Seriously. Parts of Canada are in the Arctic Circle, and you have nothing that stands in the way of that weather that forms up in the Arctic and blows down, the weather patterns that work their way down, and it just comes down and it dumps snow and has ice and cold wind, and it's driving, and it's the stuff which then travels further down into the USA and can have some pretty nasty stuff down there too, but not usually to the same extent. So you get some states in America that are particularly bad for snow. What's that one that has a lot of people that do the Iditarod and those sort of sled dog races? Minnesota. They get a lot of snow too. They're also kind of nearer to the lakes. And also if you're in a province or a state that's near to the Great Lakes, the moisture in the lakes affects the weather. This is for everybody else outside of North America. Alaska gets pretty, the Iditarod's in Alaska. And then there's another one that crosses across the border between Alaska and Canada. And they also get a lot of snow with that. But the They get a lot of people from Minnesota who actually race in the Iditarod. Sorry, Aunt. I'm just going to copy what you said and paste it back in because it decided that your message was a little bit long. That's that whole 150 character thing. I'm going to paste that in for you. No, that did not copy. I will try that again. I need to actually hit the copy button first. Don't try for 30 seconds and then it will work again. So Aunt says this, in Ohio we have one of the Great Lakes, and where I am we can get 2 inches of snow, and you drive 20 minutes east by the lake and get over 12 inches of snow from the lake effect. Yeah, lake effect is one of those things for certain provinces and states. I'm always fighting automod. It's my thing, yeah. If you're anything like me, you tend to write a little bit more detail in your words. And so unfortunately, it's one of those things that happens. So what Q was saying, Coulter was saying, it goes below 30 or 40 at worst times. Too often it's minus 30. I'm guessing you're talking Celsius too, being in Canada. Central Manitoba, where you get the coldest winters here in the prairies. So the prairies are those central provinces in Canada. Up north, Churchill gets a lot of polar bear, yeah, definitely. So Churchill is right up north in one of the provinces, for those who are not familiar. I'm a little bit more aware of Canadian geography just than a lot of non-Canadians, just because of the fact that I have family over in the East Coast and over in the West Coast, and a little tiny sprinkling of them sort of kind of near the lakes. I'm trying to think. And yeah, I've got relatives across Canada, distant relatives, but I've got them over there. So yeah, minus 30 Celsius. That is cold. That is very cold. Yeah, 0 is freezing in Celsius. Frost starts forming at 4 degrees Celsius, plus 4, not minus 4. Okay, to do with the wind chill factor and things like that is because why it can form above 0 degrees Celsius. I was going to give you a puzzle, wasn't I? I didn't actually copy that properly. So frost starts forming at 4 degrees Celsius, so it's already cold then. I remember walking to the school bus stop and thinking, my knees are cold. Thankfully, we had warm, long socks in winter, ones that came up to just below our knees. But thinking, my knees are cold, it's going to be cold at school, because I live out on the coast. Where I went to school is 10 minutes drive inland, and it's in a river valley. We don't get snow. We're way too far north for that. But for us, it can still be a bit cold. So overnight it can get frosty. And there'd be quite a number of frosts in the middle of winter. And you get to school, and if the sun hadn't got onto the school field, the playing field, rugby field or soccer field, because we had both, it would be white with frost. But you knew it was going to be, because as the school bus was driving through the valleys on the way into town, you would see the frost on the paddocks of the farms as we got closer and closer into town. It's not heavy frost. We don't get hoar frost. It's nowhere near that cold. Aren't saying, yeah, we get like minus 20 in a bad year. Nothing like Canada. It's rare and we hate it. Yeah, absolutely. Ohio's not quite as solidly dumped on in terms of, from what I understand, for snow as, say, Minnesota and those sort of ones. Just a little bit more. Yeah, but definitely central, any of those ones away from the salt water tend to get a lot colder. And also you've got the whole huge mass of the continent has an effect. So the whole ground gets colder and colder through winter. And so therefore the air gets colder and colder because it's actually getting the warmth sucked out of it. That's at 108 at the moment. I'll change the background colour first. There's a lot of snow in it. I'm thinking, shall we leave that at 108 pieces? Or do you want it a little bit harder than that? There's going to be a bit of same in it. I'm going to wait before I put that one up to see what your responses are, and I'll carry on reading the story. Since we've had a good discussion of winter weather, I could not cope with the sort of cold that you guys have there. I know the houses are built for it, they're insulated and stuff, but I also happen to know that even with all of that and with heating, there are people, especially in some areas and some living situations every year, who die of the cold because the heating got turned off because they didn't have the power for it. They couldn't pay the bills, things like that. And back in the days of when my mum was a kid, that was happening even more because things were manually heated a lot more. So therefore using coal that you put into a furnace or had a gravity feed furnace, or an oil fired furnace where you had to pay for the oil, the diesel for it, things like that. I have to have an independent heater for my room, the coldest in winter and hottest in summer. That's what Q's saying. Unfortunately, sometimes there'll be one room in the house that's like that. It's the coldest one in the house in winter and the warmest in summer. And hopefully you can find a way to get a little bit of extra insulation over your windows, because you lose a lot of heat through the windows. And hopefully the ceiling can be have a little bit of extra. But also being in a cold room like that, being well wrapped up for it and things. When you first go into it, it's a little bit awkward because you're wearing all these extra layers and it's not comfortable. So Q's saying, my dad just installed a pellet stove in the camper here. Feels so interesting to have 2 generations gather in it. Yeah, that's cool. Wonderful. Pellet stoves, I've heard, can be really cool. Pellet stoves, for those who don't know, the pellets used look a little bit like chicken feed pellets, where it's like these extrusions that are like the thickness of your finger, and they're these little chopped off bits, but they're made out of waste wood, so like sawdust and stuff like that, and that are compressed, and then they often have a hopper that automatically feeds a certain amount. How many puzzle pieces are we doing, by the way? And then I'll carry on. And that's at the moment is 108. Let me know if you want more pieces or not. For those who aren't familiar with them, we do have pellet stoves in New Zealand, but most people don't use them yet because they don't want to have to keep on paying if they currently have access to free firewood like we do. 108 might be good, yeah, I'm thinking. So the Real Salties is saying, I found a book I might like to read. Wonderful, excellent. So is this for your own entertainment, or is this for streaming or anything like that? I hope you don't mind me asking. You don't have to answer, by the way. Edge of Collapse. Oh, that sounds interesting. Sounds dystopian. For your own entertainment. Brilliant. Dystopian sci-fi, maybe? How are we with that as a possibility? I'm just going to paste this link in here for everybody for the puzzle. Hit save, not hit enter. Okay, that should be good for the jigsaw puzzle now. I will get that so it's not doing its overlay thing for everybody else. There. No, don't worry about it, about your spelling. I talk like bad spelling. To read, Edge of Collapse, Own Entertainment, it's Apocalypse. Sorry, not good at spelling, that's fine. Apocalypse, yeah. No, that sounds cool. Sounds very good. Edge of Collapse. I read when I was in my 20s, late teens, early 20s. I read a lot of apocalyptic sci-fi. Tended to be the young adult version rather than the standard adult stuff, just because most of the proper adult sci-fi at the time was a little bit too chewy for me. A little bit too detailed. I wanted something that was more story and less descriptions of government systems. But that was just me. That's my brain. Anyway, I'll carry on with reading the story. It's about a female character and an EMP, electromagnetic pulse, which wipes out the electrical systems and computer systems, happened, and the female main character escapes a jail-like prison. I'm guessing the EMP stopped the electronic lock systems from working. Yeah, cool. Good way to escape. And also tracking systems wouldn't work well if the EMP was powerful enough. It can drop out all the tracking systems. So let's get on with reading the rest of the story. You can keep talking about the book, that's cool. It's just I'm going to actually try and concentrate on actually reading the story, because otherwise I'm going to get in trouble for being late again. Somebody in the family doesn't like me reading too late in the day because they're worried that they're going to go hungry because I'm not cooking dinner. I mean, yes, they could cook dinner, but, because I'm not actually doing the paid work, that's what I do instead. Anyway, we've read about the weather. That's right. I'm sure one goes through a great deal to get one's education, said Peggy, because of the fact that it was so cold in the class. No, don't apologise for that. That's no problem at all. I love the fact that people were getting excited about books to read and reading. It's all good. And I'll have to look up that book myself. But never mind, the holidays begin on Wednesday, and then you shall have a lovely time. So this is Lillian talking, because she's not at school anymore because she's looking after the house. And then you shall have a lovely time. If only this frost keeps up, we ought to get some skating, and that's warm work at any rate. Yeah, so if it's cold enough, the ice on the pond, then they can go skating. But as regards skating, the children were doomed to disappointment, for with the usual perversity of the English climate, the weather changed, and Christmas Eve brought a mild wind and drizzling rain. Yeah, disappointing. And yeah, that does happen. A lot of that's because England, like New Zealand, is completely surrounded by ocean, sea, and the salt in the sea water means it stabilizes its temperature shifts. The sea water doesn't cool down as quickly as the land, which is the cooling of the land can actually cause certain weather conditions to happen. But once the land is cold, when you get snow falls on it, it doesn't melt as readily. Cold rain is 100% worse than snow. Absolutely. It's there, and it gets into everything, and it makes the air feel damp even when you're not in it. The humidity increases and it makes it feel colder. And if you get wet, it's miserable. Miserable. The English climate is more mild than it is in continental Europe because of the fact that they've got the North Atlantic current, North Atlantic drift, whatever it is. There's a current that goes up past the coast of South America and then diagonally crosses the Atlantic, this way for you guys, over to Europe, and it skirts around the west coast of England and Ireland, which is why Ireland is actually warmer than England for latitude, and it moderates the temperature. It's quite interesting. It has a big effect on it. It's also why there are certain plants that grow in the wild in Ireland that are from my part of New Zealand, where the climate is a little bit warmer again, because it doesn't get as cold and frosty. Anyway, so they had horrible weather on Christmas Eve. Mild wind and a drizzling rain. They trudged through the half-melted snow to the church to help with the decorations, for it was fun, twisting holly and evergreens and making garlands of ivy to fasten round the pillars. Archie, who naturally was to the fore on such occasions, this is their American friend who lives with his grandmother down the road, managed to climb up and hang wreaths around the heads of the cherubs at the top of the Jacobean monument, which gave their weeping faces quite a festive appearance for once. Each of the crusaders was accorded a cross of yew, because it's the local church and it's been there a long time. It's got various funerary memorials, tombs, and also memorials in honour of different battles and wars that people locally have been involved with. And so these things being decorated is actually not such an unusual thing for being a more rural style of church of a certain era in England. There were churches like this around where we lived in rural England, and it was really fascinating to go to them and see all these sorts of things. These were real people. These were ancestors of our neighbours the ones that we're looking at, these that the tombs are for and the names up on the walls, they were people who lived here, instead of it just being theory in a book or, words. Anyway, cat fur. Each of the Crusaders was accorded a cross of yew, and the Elizabethan lady and gentleman had a special decoration all to themselves. Lillian transformed the pulpit into a perfect bower, weaving in holly and laurels, till the rector hoped she would leave room for him inside it. So the pulpit in these older churches, often you have a few steps up to it, and it's fastened. It's often a stone bracket with a wall around the edge. Sometimes it's wood, sometimes it's carved stone, with a little wee angled bit for putting your Bible on to read from, and your notes for the parson or the vicar or the rector or the whatever his role is called, and depending on his actual office as to which one he is called. And so she's made these decorations that go up and over the top. That's why it's referencing it as a bower. But the pulpit is often, like I said, a little bit higher, so that the chap can be seen from every pew in the church, and everybody can hear him as well, without having, back in the days when they didn't have sound systems, his voice would carry because he was just up a little bit higher, and his voice was coming across people instead of through them. Anyway, so the rector hoped she would leave room for him inside it, and Peggy and Bobby helped, or hindered, the schoolmistress as she adorned the font, which is where you baptised little babies, with a wonderful arrangement of cotton wool and frosted leaves. Luckily, Christmas Day was fine, for a wet Christmas is enough to damp the stoutest spirits. But after that, the weather indulged in such a variety of changes, alternately freezing and thawing from day to day, that there was no time for a safe crust of ice to form even on the smallest and shallowest of ponds. So disappointing. They wouldn't have had skating rinks. They would only ever have gone skating on ponds. Or if somebody actually created a pond, a shallow pond, like in a yard, with putting water out and making sure it couldn't escape, and letting it freeze. That's the only way they would have been able to skate, just with natural freezing. At the first fall of deep snow, Archie had mounted both himself and the children on Canadian snowshoes. Oh, that's right. Yeah, he's Canadian, I think, not American. For as soon as his illness had allowed, he had persuaded his aunt, not his grandmother. Yeah, cold in the head, not very good at remembering things, had persuaded his aunt to bring his tool chest into his bedroom, and had beguiled his convalescence with a little carpentry. So shall we find a photograph of what Canadian snowshoes look like? I know what they look like. Not meaning to be rude. But yeah, I don't recall. Yeah, I have actually seen real ones. I'm going to find you some simple ones, not some big extensive cross-country ones. That will probably do. No, that's a stock photo. Bother. That's a stock. Why are all the good photos stock photos? No, that's a stock. I'm sorry. We'll get there. So, hi Squibble, good to have you here. Great to have you here. I'm feeling so much better, except for the memory's terrible. I called Archie American, and I also said he lived with his grandmother. Archie's Canadian and he lives with his great aunt. I'm feeling a lot better. They're usually like a beaver tail, yes. Making me wonder myself, used to have access to some, but here are so many types now, made out of treated and then bent birch traditionally. Yes, absolutely. And birch is also, I think, one of the main timbers used for making traditional wooden tennis rackets, which some of the shapes of traditional snowshoes can be similar. I should find a way of doing a search that doesn't include. That one shows about. Is it? No, I didn't want to do that. Sorry. There's a website that actually shows you can buy kits for making them yourself. Because they were originally all homemade. People would make them themselves because you needed to be able to make them. They made out of treated and then bent birch, I believe, traditionally. They soak it and soften it and then bind it, and it creates the shape, which is why I'm after the style generally that I'm currently looking for. Put the thingy in the thingy. Folder, computer, specific books, Angel Razzle, right book, that's the one. And then this one I think is probably going to be the one that'll do the best for what I want. Once I actually start clicking on the right ones, I often find something that's more appropriate. Okay, let's go to our picture thing. Illustrations, picture, other, browse. Go to the right folder and find these ones. Open, move it, and resize. We're getting there. Sorry about this, folks. And turn on illustration. There you go. These are one type of traditional snowshoes. Now, the reason why I was looking for generally ones a bit like this is because some of the ones I was finding are rounded like this at both ends, which, yes, you can buy them ready-made like that. And some of them are pointed kind of like this at both ends, where they've taken two separate sections of birchwood and they've fastened it together at the ends, and then they've stretched it apart in the middle, and then they put these pieces of timber. See, there's a piece of timber there, and there's another piece of timber there, and it holds the sides apart. There you go, holds them apart. So, and also they will soak it so that the wood wants to stay more like that. And then this is thread, like string, handmade twine type stuff, or done with rawhide or leather or any of those other types of fibres which are twisted up to make them strong enough, and then woven or knotted together and fastened around the edges so that, see, this one's close and that one's close. So when you put your foot down on top of it, it spreads the load of you out over a bigger area so you don't squish down into the snow. If you put your foot down on the snow, this much weight, all your weight on this much area, your foot will go down. If you put all of your weight onto something that's much bigger, it spreads that weight out and you don't fall through the snow as much. So Coleslaw saying my past Gigi or Gigi? Gigi, I'm going to go for. Ukrainian for grandpa, had a couple of sets like that. For getting to a small cottage, yeah, absolutely. There were ones, yeah, rawhide is a common topping for it. But there are, Gigi, yeah. I'm guessing I'm still saying it right. Gigi. I'm not quite sure. I'm just saying it that way because that's how we used to write, horses, Gigi's. We would write it like the way you've got it there in the chat. I will actually just put up that other one that I found because I was quite intrigued that there is a place that sells them as Gigi. That makes a lot more sense because of its grandfather. And even though the words are not the same, often there will be a link sound between words for the same thing in different languages. I don't know why. That's just the way languages seem to do it sometimes. And it sounds strange, but that's just something I've observed. I'll see if I can find that other picture. There. This is a kit set that you can get through one of those sites. These are pointed at both ends, but they've got the curve up, that's the front, and it goes up so that when you're walking and you put your foot forward, the curve at the front like that means that It doesn't dig into the snow and trip you up, because, yeah, you can trip up very easily. This is just done with a special thread or a binding. And then they've got instructions how to wrap it round and knot it and all that sort of stuff. But it's a similar sort of idea. And then this trails out behind you, and it means that because when you're moving your foot forward, that there pulls along the snow behind you. And you've got part of you stays in contact, and it just makes it easier. People who are used to wearing snowshoes can kind of run in them. Not fast, normal running, but compared with anyone else walking on snow, it's a lot more effective. Anyway, right, Gigi. I'll try and remember that one. That's good to know. So yeah, if you want to find out more about snowshoes, look them up online. Lots of information. A lot of them will be Canadian, because a lot of Canadians out in more country settings, rural settings, take part in outdoor winter activities where you might want to be able to walk somewhere across snow, or you're not necessarily, depending on what you're doing, you may or may not be wanting to ski. Not everywhere you want to use skis for cross-country style skiing. Some places you want to be walking on top of the snow because of what you're going to be doing afterwards once you're there. Anyway, let's carry on reading, because I want to finish this today. Not the book, the chapter. I don't want to have to finish partway through the chapter. So he had beguiled his convalescence with a little carpentry. So Archie has obviously been making Canadian snowshoes as part of his convalescence. At first they had all floundered hopelessly about, and it had taken some practice even to slide a few steps. But long before they had reached the stage of skimming over the frozen surface at a rate of 8 or 10 miles an hour, that's running, which had been their fond ambition, the snow had melted into moist and dirty slush, which was particularly trying. And they had just decided to make a sledge out of an old packing case and drag Lillian round the pasture. As outdoor exercise was rather out of the question, amusement must perforce be found indoors, and amateur theatricals became the order of the day. Archie was full of enthusiasm over what Nancy called play acting. Sorry, getting another throat lozenge. And had soon initiated his friends into all the mysteries of drop scenes, side shifts, makeups, cues, and footlights. He's obviously got a very wide range of either experience or reading and interest in all sorts of things. Both tragedy and comedy raged in the Rose Parlour, the company feeling themselves equal to anything from a representation of Hamlet to the famous scene between Sir Peter and Lady Teazle. I have no idea who they are. I wonder if that's to do with our quote at the beginning of the story. Probably something from some school play. Sorry, trying to get it started. Right. Lady Teazle. Like all their hobbies, they rode it hard, or as Archie elegantly expressed it, rolled up their sleeves and went into it bald-headed. Not heard that one before. I'm afraid the housekeeping languished while Lillian painted scenery on large sheets of blue grocery paper. Nancy had to dry her washing as best she could, for all the clothes horses in the establishment were needed for side wings to hang the scenery on. And the dining room tablecloth, being green, was generally missing, having to do duty for such occasions as a grove, a glade in the forest, or the garden scene in Much Ado About Nothing. Anything that's outdoors greeny. From such constant rehearsals, the actors found themselves adopting a very stilted kind of conversation. They addressed each other as "ho, knave," or "prithee, kind wench," and would answer the simplest question by "yea, certes," or "an't please thee, my lord." Bobby took to carrying about an old horse pistol, which he had found in the lumber room, and saying "odds bodkins" on all occasions, and Peggy put on such a general air of melodrama that it seemed scarcely possible for her to speak in plain prose, that means normal language. Archie was impresario, stage manager, scene shifter, dresser, maker-up, and principal actor all combined, while Lillian waxed so enthusiastic that she even sacrificed the feathers out of her last summer's best hat to adorn the slouched headgear considered necessary for a due representation of Romeo. One thing only the players felt to be missing in their entertainments, and that was the very important feature of an audience. For what was the use of learning up parts and constructing scenery if there is nobody to come and watch you act? Peggy sounded father on the subject of a children's party, but he did not rise at all to the occasion. Dad was not looking forward to that idea, obviously. Well. We can't afford it, Peggy, he said briefly, then noticing her look of disappointment. That's where the shoe pinches, my dear child. The plain necessities of life we are bound to have, but the state of my purse tells me not to indulge in any luxuries, and I am afraid we must consider party giving under that head. Kind Miss Forster would probably have turned her house upside down for Archie's gratification. Excuse me. But she herself was on the sick list this Christmas time, so any gaieties at the Willows were equally out of the question. Getting a hint of the dilemma, the rector came to the rescue and invited the performers to give an exhibition of their skill and talent on the occasion of the Sunday school tea party. Wow, built-in audience. Amazing. Which was to take place early in the new year. This gave quite a fresh aspect to the affairs. And great were the discussions as to what piece should be chosen, everybody unfortunately wanting something different, and generally utterly inappropriate or impossible to act. And probably everyone wanting something where they could shine. Lillian, always fond of tragedy, had set her heart on the last scene in Romeo and Juliet. Nobody's surprised there. I should be Juliet, you know, stretched out on the bier, and Archie would have to be Romeo and come in and think I was dead and stab himself, and then, of course, I should wake up and stab myself too. And Peggy and Bobby could be the Montagues and Capulets being reconciled over our dead bodies. I can imagine Lillian in that. Archie, however, having leanings towards comedy, was not at all willing to play the role of the despairing lover. We could never manage to fix up an Italian vault, he objected, and I don't see how Peggy and Bobby could represent a whole crowd of Montagues and Capulets, however much noise they made. Why not do a scene from The Rivals? You'd be grand as Lydia Languish, and Peggy would just enjoy being Mrs. Malaprop's mistakes. I read that wrong. Peggy would just enjoy Mrs. Malaprop's mistakes. I, of course, should be Captain Absolute. Then who would be Sir Anthony? Why, Bobby would have to be Sir Anthony. Mrs. Malaprop, this character from The Rivals, is why we have the word malapropism. A malapropism is where you use a word that has a similar sound, often the main start of it. Actually, let's just put it in here. That would be easier. No, not at. Malapropism, the blundering use of an absurdly inappropriate word or expression in place of a similar sounding one. There you go. So when you get somebody who is always doing this, always using the wrong word because part of it sounds similar to the right word, they are using a malapropism, and it's named after this character in this play, Mrs. Malaprop, who was known for doing this all the time. And it was a comedy. He couldn't. Why? Bobby would have to be Sir Anthony. He couldn't. Bobby, your father. That would be strange. It would look perfectly ridiculous and people would only laugh. No, that won't do anyhow, and we shall have to think of something else. Bobby was vague as to any particular play, only bargaining he might be allowed to bring in his pistol and do as much fighting as possible, and that his part should not require too much learning lines. Peggy had ambitions towards the trial scene in The Merchant of Venice, with herself as Portia, having a scarlet dressing gown which she thought would answer beautifully for the doctor's robes, and designing Archie for the part of Shylock, while Lillian was to don male attire and represent the unfortunate merchant. Then who was to take Bassanio and Gratiano and Salanio and Salarino and the Duke, to say nothing of Nerissa? Bobby can't very well act 6 parts at once. Can't we leave them out? Leave them out? Might as well act Hamlet with the part of Hamlet omitted, said Archie with much scorn, and the problem seemed no nearer being solved than ever. Just as well it's the new year that they're going to do this play. But here the rector stepped in again and limited the performance to half an hour's duration, begging them to choose something appropriate for a Sunday school audience, and if possible with a moral, and further reminding them that a platform consisting of tables hastily pushed together after the tea was concluded would scarcely give facilities for either footlights, drop scenes, or side shifts, a curtain being the utmost he could undertake to manage in that direction, probably held up on a broomstick in front of the stage. That's my interjection. With wings very much clipped, the soaring actors had to throw aside Shakespeare and Sheridan and apply themselves to books of recitations and dialogues for village schools. It was difficult to find anything of the right length with exactly the right number of parts, but at last Archie declared he had hit upon one which would do beautifully. Just 4 characters. You and I could be John and Mary, Lillian and Peggy and Lillian. You and I could be John and Mary, Lillian. And Peggy and Bobby would, of course, be the children. Why, of course, I'm too old for a child, said Peggy indignantly. No, you're not. You're small for your age, and you won't look so very much taller than Bobby. If you wear your shortest frock, it'll make her look like a little girl. It's a jolly piece, and should go first rate, so we'd better decide on this right away and let the rector know. Peggy flushed up to her eyes and turned her back to hide her rising tears. After all her aspirations, it was a bitter humiliation to be put down for the very minor part of a child, especially by Archie. She had been learning elocution at school this term and knew she could both recite and act well. Moreover, she loved to shine and be first and foremost, and had looked forward to this occasion as likely to prove one of much triumph. Of course she had. Very few of us are heroes when it really comes to the point, and I grieve to say that she looked so glum and was generally so grumpy and discontented over the arrangement that unselfish Lillian, divining the cause, instantly proposed to give up her own part to Peggy and train a little village girl for the second child instead. But this Peggy would not allow, and rushed away to the barn to weep off her ill humour amongst the hay, returning in a much better frame of mind with several valuable suggestions for Lillian's make-up. For she was a generous child at heart, though she could not give up her own way without a struggle. So sometimes, yes, you just need to go off and have a good cry about something, and even if the situation is not changed, you cope with it better after you've had a good cry. That's just the way life is. The small piece chosen did not require much either in way of rehearsing, scenery, or costumes, which was just as well, for the time was short, and the day of the tea party seemed to arrive almost directly, for by 4 o'clock the school was full of impatient children, dressed in their best, the girls with their heads such marvels of frizzing and curling that you could well imagine their hair had been screwed up in plaits and papers for several days previously. Curling papers. That's how you used to curl your hair, to make it curly. While the boys were shiny with soap and hair oil, Lillian and Peggy were soon hard at work pouring out tea as if for dear life, while Archie and Bobby distributed buns and ham sandwiches with lightning speed, which seemed to vanish with equal quickness, for many of the boys had dispensed with dinner in order to enjoy their tea the more, dinner being midday meal, tea being this afternoon tea. "The big boy in the corner drank 12 cups, declared Peggy. "And little Willie Jones had 8 or even 9, for I lost count, and the boy from Monk End Farm ate at least 14 buns. I believe he pocketed a few, though. I never could catch him." Peggy was in her element. She was able to manage, or as Archie called it, boss around, to her heart's content. She kept a severe eye on the small children, patted them firmly on the back when they choked, and refused to allow them to grab at the cake, regulating their tea according to their own notions of what was good for them, and turning stolen lumps of sugar out of their pockets with the cleverness of a detective. Tea was over at last, and the crumbly remains having been cleared away, the tables were pushed to one side of the great schoolroom to form the platform, while the benches were arranged in rows to accommodate the audience, which at present was indulging in an amount of noise only to be equalled by the Tower of Babel. Peggy, hard at work behind the scenes, put her eye to a hole in the curtain and surveyed the prospect below, where children, big and little, were engaged in jumping over the forms, that's the bench seats, which don't have a back on them, chasing each other round the stove and generally acting more like monkeys at the zoo than civilised human beings, while the rector strove in vain to collect them at the empty end of the room to play games, and the curate, a shy young man fresh from Oxford, that's from his training college, looked as if he would have preferred to wrestle with a consignment of heathens from the Cannibal Islands. By the way, that means somewhere in the South Pacific, my part of the world. Yes, there used to be cannibals in some of the islands. And yes, I've met people who were cannibals when they were younger. "Come along, Bobby," said Peggy. "We ought to go and help. Archie and Lillian can arrange the scenery quite well. The rector is getting pulled to pieces, and poor Mr. Wentworth has lost his glasses." Mrs. Davenport would have approved of Peggy for once, for even the pattern Bertha could not have displayed, Bertha being one of her children, could not have displayed more energy in a parish emergency. She promptly organised a game of oranges and lemons, herself leading the long tail of infants who passed under the rector's and Mr. Wentworth's upraised hands. "Oranges and lemons, say the bells of St. Clement's," and the chain of children walk through underneath, and you have to keep walking through and walking through. It's an elimination rhyme thing that goes on. It's a really old one that we used to play in the school playgrounds as a little kid. Passed under the rector's and Mr. Wentworth's upraised hands. She set the boys to swing honey pots and the girls to play drop the handkerchief, both games that I don't know. You can write them down and look them up. She boldly interposed her small person between the fists of two fighting hobbledehoys and seized a little boy by the boot who had ventured to climb up the stovepipe. That's the chimney. Obviously it was not hot today. She welcomed some of the parents who had begun to arrive for the entertainment and found them comfortable places on the benches, even nursing one of the babies while its mother went to the rescue of an older child who was being forcibly held down and sat upon by several of its companions. And by the time the bell was rung and the audience requested to take their places, she was almost as hot and pulled about as the rector himself, but with a feeling of conscious virtue. "I shall take great to have you here. Good to see you. Wonderful to have you here." Sorry, I'm just catching up in case there was anything else. Yeah, I'm doing a lot better than I was. Pulled about as pulled about as the rector himself, with a feeling of conscious virtue that made up for everything. The first part of the entertainment was to be chiefly musical, because the children's part is only one small part. Chiefly musical, so the proceedings began with a waltz by Lillian, who was always the rector's mainstay in making up a program and had helped at most of his Sunday school concerts. since she was 10 years old. A violin solo followed from the village tailor, who was much applauded, most of the hearers being persuaded that not even the band in the Warford public gardens could surpass Bill Evans and his fiddle. Little Jimmy Carson recited The Charge of the Light Brigade, which my dad had to learn at school. And it's one of those things which people used to. Into the valley of death rode the however many 600? I can't remember. In a high, thin, piping voice, standing on tiptoe in his eagerness to give due effect to the famous lines, flinging out his arms wildly to indicate where cannon to the right of them, cannon to the left of them, volleyed and thundered, and getting so mixed up with his aspirates that he concluded with, honour the charge they made, honour the Light Brigade, noble 600. Aspirate letters. Instead of honour the charge they made, the noble 600. A selection of small boys and girls sang school glees, songs that you sing for school as school entertainments, and Christmas carols, a trifle flat occasionally, but perhaps that was the fault of the piano, which needed tuning. The two Miss Prices from the post office warbled a mild little duet, which gave unbounded satisfaction to their fond mamma, but to nobody else. The blacksmith's assistant roared out a sea song in a voice like a tempest. That's probably a sea shanty. Sea songs used to be sung to help with hauling ropes, either pulling up an anchor, pulling up sails, pulling in a sail to move where it sits, all that sort of thing. And don't panic if you don't finish the puzzle. I can always run it again or whatever next time. So that's what sea songs are in this context, what we would now call a sea shanty. And a young man on a visit to the miller gave a comic song which quite took the company, that's everybody there, by storm. A 5 minutes interval followed before the act, which was regarded as the chief event of the evening. There was a good deal of giggling and whispered conversation behind the scenes as the actors hastily concluded their preparations, but at length, in response to the enthusiastic clapping and stamping of the audience, the curtain was drawn aside by 2 Sunday school teachers, and the play began. Peggy, standing behind one of the clothes horses, which served for a side wing, could see the 200 eager faces turned toward the platform and experienced that peculiar sensation known as stage fright. Sorry, I'm spitting. Yeah, she probably wasn't expecting that. 200 people, wow. Stage fright. Instead of longing now for a prominent part, she heaved a sigh of relief to think that Lillian must begin instead, and trembled for the moment when she thought she would be obliged to face those watching eyes. The piece chosen turned upon a discussion between a man and his wife as to the relative difficulties of their work, resulting in the husband undertaking to do the morning's duties during the absence of the housewife. That would be a little amusing in this era. Lillian, in a print dress, apron and sunbonnet, made a charming little village mother and trotted off with her basket, leaving many injunctions for John to follow, doing the jobs that he needed to do. Archie, as the husband, in corduroy trousers, his shirt sleeves rolled up and a short clay pipe in his mouth, was a capital British workman, and his struggles in the performance of his domestic duties were the subject of much mirth. Excuse me. It's got to the sharp stage if I don't turn it over. Yes, a lot of those jobs were very hard manual work, and you needed to have the knack of them to do them. Which, if you're doing a lot of those jobs, you would gain that over time, and Lillian is developing that because she's doing these things at home. But most other people who are not doing them, especially someone like a husband who is just not used to that sort of thing, would be like, what do I do? And making a real hash of it. Anyway, we'll carry on with the description. His struggles in the performance of his domestic duties were the subject of much mirth, absolutely, and he wanted to do a comedy, so there he got it. When he broke the china and stirred up the washing with the poker, which would have made the washing filthy with the soot that was on the poker, the audience cheered, and it shouted with delight when he upset the kettle and burnt the bread black in the oven because he forgot to bring it out in time, or he had the fire too hot. Peggy and Bobby, as the children, in crumpled pinafores and smudged faces, were an equal success, for in watching Archie, Peggy had forgotten her sudden shyness. Yes. And she now threw herself thoroughly into her part, howling most realistically when her nose was scrubbed in the wash tub or her hair combed with a fork, while Bobby stole jam and resisted medicine with lifelike zeal. Lillian's face when, as Mary, she returned to find her cottage a scene of confusion, was considered excellent, and the moral of the story was enough to satisfy even the rector. The audience hoorayed and thumped with their thick boots on the floor and shouted encore, but as it was not possible to break the china, spill the medicine, and upset the kettle twice over without a considerable amount of preparation, they had to be content with the graceful bows which the artistes bestowed upon them. Wonderful. I'm guessing the moral of the story is you do the job that you do as best you can, instead of pining after someone else's. Be happy with what your lot is in life, I suppose. Well done on that puzzle. I'll just pull up. Chalet in the Carpathian Mountains. And the information that I found when I was looking for it, the Carpathian Mountains, this photo here is taken in the Ukraine. And I didn't specifically go looking for it, but that's what it was. And I'm not going to give you another puzzle, sorry, because I'm going to actually not be reading past where we are. I'm just going to finish off this chapter. We're nearly there, 2 pages, and then we'll be finishing. So, yeah, very pretty. I'll put the picture back so you can look at it, sorry. No, I can't make it any bigger. No, I can't make it any bigger, sorry, but it is very pretty. And that's the title of it, actually, is Chalet in the Carpathian Mountains. Say them, little orphaned Annie, instead of an encore, whispered Lillian to Peggy. So recite to them, little orphan Annie. As the stamping still went on and nobody seemed inclined to go, because this is the end of the show. Shall I? Said Peggy, flushing, for it was her best piece at the elocution class, and she had been complimented on it by her teacher. Yes, go on, quick, said Lillian, pushing her forward and catching the rector's eyes so he knew. Peggy was in good form that night, and I really think her recitation was considered the star of the evening. Her gruesome voice as she recounted what the goblins did to naughty boys made several small sinners in the back benches shake in their shoes. Many innocent infants felt that they should never dare go to bed in the dark again. And the wild shriek with which she ended her announcement that the goblins are about quite brought down the house. I'm guessing that's the last line of it. And the children shouted and yelled and cheered as the rector strove to get order once more and wind up the proceedings with the national anthem, which is what they used to sing at the time for at the end of anything that was an official get-together. So Peggy had her triumph after all, even if it were only a small one. It's lovely that she got a chance to, and that she had a chance to realise that she could actually get stage fright and then to work through it. Wonderful. There you go. That's the end of today's chapter. I really will try and talk less before the start of the next one so that we can actually not have to race through the actual reading of the chapter. That would be good, wouldn't it? And also so I can finish slightly earlier. I really want to be finished before we get to 5 o'clock in New Zealand. It's now nearly 5 past 5. Thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being part of me reading, whether it's chatting with me, doing the jigsaw puzzle, or just listening. I do hope you've had some fun and you're looking forward to the next part of our story. I don't know if I told you last time. I'm intending on October. The 31st of October is a Monday. The 31st of October is Halloween. I don't really go for particularly spooky things, just in general, but I am intending to read a few old English folk tales, which have a little slightly odd feel to them. They're suitable for children, mainly, but rather than our standard book chapter, whichever book we're reading, I don't know if we'll still be reading this particular book or not, but I'm intending to read these old English tales. They're traditional stories that people have actually recorded from country folk around certain parts of England. I'm intending to read some of those on Monday the 31st of October. It will be here in New Zealand. It may still be Sunday the 30th of October for you wherever you are. You know what your time zones are. And if you ever want to know what time I will be reading in your time zone, then go to my Twitch page and go to the schedule tab, whichever way you want to say it, and it will show you the times that I usually read at for you, because your computer is clever enough to know. So I will see if I can find some New Zealand stories as well. That would be really cool if I can. That's a really good question, and thank you for mentioning that. But I will see what I can find and see if I can throw in some New Zealand ones if they're appropriate. I wonder if there are any of the New Zealand myths and legends, the Māori ones, that might fit into a sort of slightly more Halloween style. I want ones that aren't too long so they can fit into our afternoon's reading slot. And maybe we can actually do, I don't know, Wednesday and Friday of the week before, maybe do some of those as well if I find some more. We'll see how we go. And the reason why I specifically chose English ones is just because most of the Halloween stories that I'm aware of are actually North American, and so they're very familiar. And so I thought if we go for something that's just a little bit unfamiliar, then that would be quite fun. Something which picks up a little bit on the feel of the season. So we'll see how we go. Anyway, so thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing this time with me. I wish you all the best between now and the next time I see you. Hopefully it'll be next time I'm reading. And I'm not going to go off and raid somebody, sorry. But you can either go to my Twitch Codex team, which is on my About page, the big round one with the picture of the book and the mouse. That will give you a link for the Twitch team, and it'll show you if there's anyone live. Probably not because of the time of day. Otherwise, go over and see if Hoot House is live or Digital Dancers or somebody like that. But I've actually got to rush off and do dinner things quite urgently. So I'm just going to say thank you for being here. Thank you very much. Good to see you. See you next time. Happy reading. Bye.